بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's Jawahir al-Quran with the Jews of the Quran, its pairs. We continue reading from Surah Al-Imran. And in this session, inshallah, we'll be dealing with verses 102 to 104. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. O believers, be mindful of Allah in the way He deserves, and do not die except in a state of full submission to Him. And do not die except in submission to Him. واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تهتدون. And hold firmly together to the rope of Allah, and do not be divided. Remember Allah's favor upon you when you were enemies. Then He united your hearts, so you, by His grace, became brothers. And you were at the brink of a fiery pit, and He saved you from it. This is how Allah makes His revelations clear to you, so that you may be rightly guided. ولتكن منكم أمة يدعون إلى الخير ويأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر وأولئك هم المفلحون. Let there be a group among you who call others to goodness, encourage what is good, and forbid what is evil. It is they who will be successful. Although number 105 is not included in Imam Al-Ghazali's selection, but of course it's since the verses call for unity amongst Muslims, the opposite was the state of those who came before us, and do not be like those who split into sects and differed after clear proofs had come to them. It is they who will suffer a tremendous punishment. Now, the first verse 102 calls for to be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Taqwa, ittaqullah. Wara is avoiding haram. Wara is avoiding haram. Taqwa, Imam Al-Ghazali said that it is giving up the part of that which is halal when you have suspicion that something that is might not work away. It's within the realm of halal, but you are not sure about it. You might give up that. In the tafsir of Ibn Kathir, he narrated the statement attributed to Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu. He said about ittaqullah haqqa tuqatih. He said أن يطاع فلا يعصى, that he will be obeyed and not disobeyed. Absolute obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's really the submission, complete submission. وأن يذكر فلا ينسى, that he will be remembered and not forgotten. وأن يشكر فلا يكفر, and that he will be thanked and he will be and one will not be ungrateful in one's relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فلا يكفر, also the lack of thankfulness, if it's on the level of belief that you would not thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then definitely it's also kufr. Yes. It has been also narrated as a hadith narrated by Al-Hakim in his Mustadrak, saying that it does fulfill the conditions and the requirements for Sahih, according to Imam Bukhari and Muslim, Sahih على شيخين ولم يخرجه. but uh, most probably it is mawquf, meaning that it is not something that it is not a hadith mentioned by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anas radiallahu anhu said about taqwa that one cannot be in a state of taqwa. You cannot be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the servant will not reach this state of taqwa in the true sense until literally he said حتى يخزن لسانه, until you store your tongue. Think about it. Like you will lock your tongue in. Why is that? Just remember that Imam Ghazali mentioned 20 ills, sins that the tongue is capable of performing. Not least is the backbiting, for example. It could be using foul language, false witness, cursing. So 20. And there was an Andalusian scholar who enumerated about 90 ills that the tongue is capable of doing. This is what the Prophet ﷺ said, أمسك عليك هذا, hold on to your tongue, control it. And I think it was Mu'adh bin Jabal who asked the Prophet ﷺ, are we held accountable for what we say? And the Prophet ﷺ said, aren't people thrown on their faces, or he said on their noses, on the day of judgment, except as the harvest of their tongues? Some said that this verse was abrogated with another one, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ, that be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as you can to your the best of your ability, rather than حَقَّ تُقَاتِهِ. But Ibn Abbas said that it was not abrogated. But حَقَّ تُقَاتِهِ, he said that you will perform, you will exert your effort in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and يجاهد في سبيل حق جهاده ولا تأخذهم في الله لومة لائم. They should not fear being blamed or being reprimanded or for doing the right thing, that they will uphold justice even if it's against themselves, their parents, and their children. When I have read this, of course, the talk of the town, as they say in the United States, is so many things are. But one thing that President Biden did lately was to pardon his son. I think his name is Hunter, but he's being investigated for breaking the law, let's say. So his father, the president, pardoned him. I immediately remembered the hadith. It's hadith muttafaq alayh, narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. There was a woman, Makhzumiyya, from Bani Makhzum. As they say, sometimes they mention these women who should not be stealing. No one should be stealing. There's a big difference between a woman. There are such cases a woman stealing just, some food, very little food, because there is nothing for their children at home. One should not look at the micro level. One should look at the what a system really allows someone to go hungry just like this. But at any rate, so I remember this woman, because in that I remember that the Prophet ﷺ said that had he took oath وأيم الله لو أن فاطمة بنت محمد سرقت لقطعت يدها أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. Had after taking oath, he said that had Fatima رضي الله عنها, she ranks highest amongst the women in paradise. But he said, the Prophet ﷺ, had she stolen, I would have cut off her hand. There are other details. In this hadith, but it is very important to remember something that people asked Usama bin Zayd to intercede on behalf of this woman, the Makhzumiyya. And he did speak to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ asked him, would you intercede في حد أتشفع في حد من حدود الله? You intercede when a red line has been crossed, metaphorically speaking. The hudud is basically when you have a clear-cut, grave sin, punishable with a known punishment. And then the Prophet ﷺ stood up and he delivered a short sermon saying what led other people before you to perdition, that they used to win an well-known, honorable people, as they say, coming from good families. When one of them steals, they would leave him alone. And when the weak amongst them steals, they perform the punishment. And then he said, وَأَيْمِ اللَّهِ لو أن فاطمة بنت محمد سرقت لقطعت يدها متفق عليه. This is taqwa. This is really being God conscientious, that you would uphold the law regardless of who broke the law. And it seems that what's going on as if the role of also Western representatives and their like in their parliaments, in the Senate and the Congress, and they have been in Western Europe, in different parts of the world. They have been approving time and again. They have been passing laws against revelation, against what we have known through and through as prohibited. I say we, including Jews and Christians, we have known. And anything that would please the crowd, anything that would, something that goes wrong, if you cannot prevent it, that's one thing. But to pass laws to make it legal, permissible, that's a total different thing. Marijuana is now legal, has been in Holland. Prostitution in many Western countries is legal. Abortion without need Uh, and without limitation is also legal. Euthanasia is legal. Assisted suicide is legal. Gambling is legal. Alcohol is legal. Same-sex marriage, homosexuality is legal. Forgetting about what befell Sodom and Gomorrah. It's not a story of lack of hospitality. Usury, what they call interest, is legal. They knew through and through that it was not. And I hope that we're not following them. لو دخلوا جحر ضب لدخلتموه. Had they entered the hole of a lizard, you would follow them into that hole, metaphorically speaking, of course. That will imitate them in every single aspect. And this is not the end of this story. There's a within these 4 verses, at one point, the verse number 104, it does talk about advocating the good and prohibiting evil. And do not die except in a state of Islam, submission to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you are healthy, when you are sick, just simply die in a state of submission to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you die, you will be resurrected in that state. And since you don't know the moment of death, just try to be consistent and maintain, integrity, the way you lead your life. I think it's be on the path to the hereafter in a positive sense. Just to think about the punishment on the day of judgment. It has been narrated. It's narrated by Imam Ahmad, but also narrated by Tirmidhi and Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, Ibn Hibban in his Sahih, Al-Hakim in his Mustadrak. Tirmidhi himself said this hadith Hasan Sahih. Al-Hakim said that is على شرط الشيخين ولم يخرجا. What is it? لو أن قطرة من الزقوم قطرت في دار الدنيا لأفسدت على أهل الدنيا معايشهم فكيف من ليس له طعام إلا من الزقوم. The food of the people of hellfire, that زقوم, if a drop from that end up in our world, if it's just simply just if one drop ends up in on earth, if it drops, it will contaminate, of course, it, and will make our life unbearable. It will spoil things for us. One drop from that. So it's how about those who have no food except that zaqum? So one drop would contaminate everything on earth, but even life in itself will become practically miserable. The Prophet ﷺ said that whoever loves to be avoided hellfire and to enter paradise, then he should die in a state of belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the day, the hereafter, the day of judgment, and to do to people, this is the golden rule, to do to people what he loves people to do to himself. This is the golden rule. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. And hold firmly together to the rope of Allah, and do not be divided. And remember Allah's favor upon you. Remember. When you were enemies, Remember Al-Aus and Khazraj, the two tribes in Medina who had ongoing animosity, and they used to fight each other. Like many tribes in the Arabian Peninsula, this was their way of life. Fight and fight and fight, simply because you belong to a different tribe. There's nothing serious between them. The fighting was very serious. The animosity was very serious. The killing was very serious. Al-Aus and Khazraj, once they became Muslims, they became the best people in the history. I mean, they went out of their way to honor and take care of the needs of the Muslim migrants from Mecca. The best hosts ever. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them abundantly. So hold on firmly together to the rope of Allah. Of course, the rope, Hablullah al-Matin, it's the Qur'an. This is really the covenant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And remember, this is the grace, the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon you, changing you from being enemies to having, uniting your hearts. So you, by His grace, became brothers. And you were at the brink of a fiery pit, and He saved you from it. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes His revelations clear to you, so that you may be rightly guided. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Okay, remember, for example, there are other verses in the Quran. كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر. We can use this for two reasons. The first part, you have been the best ummah that has been sent for forth for people, but it is conditional. It's not about ethnicity. It's not about physical attributes. It's not about geographical area. No. It's about advocating the good and prohibiting evil. We have also إنما المؤمنون إخوة. Verily, believers are brothers. And when we say brothers, always talk about the sisters are part of the picture. We have وَأَنَّ هَذِهِ أُمَّتُكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً وَأَنَا رَبُّكُمْ فَاتَّقُونِ. That verily this ummah is one ummah, and I am your Lord. So be mindful of your Lord. Be mindful be God conscientious. It's ummah wahida. One can really think about, the European Union, just as an example, is a union between people who might not have the same language. German, French, Dutch, Swedish, Finnish, Greek. Some of them are Orthodox, some of them are Catholics, some of them are Protestants, some of them are atheists, some of them. But they used to fight. The Catholics and the Protestants, they used to fight, and for a long time there was a war that took place, 30 years war. And ultimately they met in Osnabrück in Germany, and they put an end to this Catholic Protestant war. It doesn't mean that they became one theologically, but they have ended the war. And I can tell you the truth. I thought, can't we, as Muslims, have an Osnabrück moment amongst ourselves? This is not about states. It's about Muslims. It's about Muslims. One God, one messenger. We believe in all messengers, but we have Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We don't have anyone else. Through him, we have received revelation. It's one Qur'an. It's one Qibla. One direction of prayer. Same prayer. We don't have differences. We one place for pilgrimage. Same pilgrimage for all people. Unified. The Prophet ﷺ said that this ummah will also be divided ultimately into some 70 sects, branches. One of them is in paradise, will end up in paradise. This one is not, just don't try to limit it to a group, a party, a movement, a contemporary one, because they did not exist for most of Islamic history. And adding an Islamic, title does not really make it the only one. If you are following the Quran, you are following the Sunnah, no deviation, you are part of the Sunnah. Even a lazy Muslim is part of the Sunnah, because being lazy is not the best state, but at least being lazy doesn't mean that you are creating some sectarian movement or what have you. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, the example of the believers in their in taking care of each other, being merciful to each other, being supportive of each other. مثل المؤمنين في توادهم وتراحمهم وتعاطفهم is similar to the one body كمثل الجسد الواحد. If one organ of it suffers, complains, suffers, really is sick, then the rest of the body will tend to it and will have fever. This is narrated by Imam Muslim. What does it mean? It means that if alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala divided the rizq to the individuals, divided the rizq into regions. Certain areas have, alhamdulillah, the certain resources. The highest per capita income in the world is an Arab Muslim country, but some of the lowest per capita incomes also in the Arab world. That's not really what it should be the case. We don't talk about communism. It's they are finished. Nothing could revive that kind of ideology. We are not naive, but uplifting. The economies. It's not about charity. It's about taking care of part of this ummah. We are, it's one civilization. It's one history, and it's one future, inshallah. There are certain things that took place over the years the Western colonial powers did divide the Arab and Muslim lands, dividing and conquering, and put in many places, putting minorities in, to rule over uh, the Muslims deliberately. This spirit of the Muslim Ummah can be summarized by something that one of my students said almost 40 years ago, and I would end the session with this statement. It is still, I can still see the face of the student after these 40 years. He said, if a Muslim in India sneezes, I would say, Yarhamkumullah. And at the time, I used to teach at Bethlehem University in Palestine. Yarhamkumullah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.